I forgot that I had that turned off, but you probably don't need to see me anyway at this point. But I do want to introduce Jan Anderson, who does sales and training at Baker and Taylor for the Collect Connect product. Now, you all in the audience might know that the State Library provides all of our libraries with access to Collect Connect. The Collect piece is where you go to file all of your surveys and all of the accreditation information. But I want you to know you can also use the Connect portion, which gives you access to state and national data. Jana's been in the library industry for 32 years, and he's going to help us understand how we can use those statistics at the library. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Becky, and welcome everyone. Thank you for making time this afternoon to take a look at Bibliostat Connect. So just like Becky laid out, Collect and Connect, Bibliostat Collect and Bibliostat Connect have been around. They're kind of sister products. They've been around for between 25 and 30 years now. And they were both developed, by or in conjunction with state libraries, specifically for use by public libraries and administration by state libraries. So, as Becky mentioned, many of you, if not most of you, have probably used Collect, which is the tool that is used to administer your annual public library report. So that's the tool that gathers the data. And now today we want to take a look at Connect, the other side of things, which is the tool that allows for data dissemination and allows us to do quick, easy, and graphical comparisons and chart generation and all that sort of good stuff. So, we've got these data that we've been painstakingly collecting for decades. Why not have a tool that puts those data at our fingertips and allows us to make use of them? So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So Bibliostat Connect, and I'm going to be looking at my larger screen over here. So here's the URL for it. And I was going to mention too that I think by default these products again are made available through the state library to all the public libraries. So by default, I think that each public library has a login to Connect, but we can create additional ones if more than one is required at a particular library. So to obtain your login, if you don't already have it, you can contact the state library, or you can also contact us directly at Baker and Taylor. And I should have put this on the screen, but let me see if I got it somewhere. I'll give you the support number for Baker and Taylor Bibliostat Collect Connect. I'll read it off to you now, and then hopefully I'll find it on the screen as well in a few minutes. But it's 866-785-9935. So that's the number. Again, 866-785-9935, where you can get login information as well. You should be able to get that from the state library. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and log in here. I'm here at the login screen. I'm going to go ahead and log in. So this is what you will see upon logging in to Bibliostat Connect. So with statistics, they can get pretty involved at times. And so we try to make a tool here that is user-friendly and, can be navigated by, a new user just about as well as an advanced user or a statistical guru or whatever. So having logged in here, you'll notice up on the main menu bar up here, there's kind of four different steps or tabs laid out. So those are ways that I'll point out as we go along that you can kind of, keep track of where you are in your progression to achieving results here with your graph or table. But I want to point out a couple of other things while we're here, pretty basic, self-explanatory things, log off. The help link here will open up a PDF document for support and help. I'm going to close that out. So we have landed on, upon logging in, we're at the setup screen, which is sort of it's the initial screen that comes even before the libraries step that we'll look at here in a moment. And anytime that I click on settings up here in the top right from other screens, it will take me back to this setup screen. Okay, so from here, I basically I have one main thing that I need to do, and then a couple of optional things. So hopefully this resolution is working out all right for you. So the chief thing that I want to do on this page is to select the data set that I'm going to work with. And if I click on this drop down, you can see I get a list of all of the data sets that currently reside in Bibliostat Connect. Most of them, you can see up here at the top, there's a couple of sort of national data sets. Most of the rest of these are individual state data sets. There's a couple, a few Australian states, I think a Canadian province or two. But of course, a couple of these are going to be of more interest to us, which we're going to look at today. The first one we'll start off with here in a second is this PLSC/census data set. So this is the national data set comprised of data elements that are commonly collected by all 50 states. So your state survey, your state report that's administered each year, a subset of all of the data elements on that survey are common among all the states in the US. And so those data elements are gathered and funneled up through IMLS at the federal level, and then they're made available here in published data sets. So that's what we're going to look at here in a second. So that's the only thing I have to do from this screen. But I have some other optional things that I can do. I can select some different display options over here. The other main thing is if I choose to, I can select I can identify myself as a particular library. Again, I'm not required to do that, and it won't change what is visible or available to me later on, except that if I do, select myself as a library, then it will bring up my data for me automatically without my having to select that every time. So just for some examples today, I hope it's okay. I'm going to identify myself as Ames Public Library to work us through a couple of examples here. And again, I've done a lot of talking, but that's really all you have to do on this initial setup screen. And I'm going to go ahead and click Next down here at the bottom. So that advances me now to a page titled Select Libraries. So this corresponds with our first step up here on the menu tab up here, menu bar at the top. So from here, the first thing that I want to do anytime I'm producing a report, whether it be a table or a graph or whatever, I want to identify the libraries that I'm going to report out on. Okay, so this is where a moment ago, my having selected or identified myself as a particular library, it places my library automatically for me in my list of selected libraries. Now, over here on the right, I have three methods by which I can add libraries to this list that I want to report on. Okay, so we'll take at least a quick look at each of these as we go through, but kind of the simplest or most self-explanatory one might be to select alphabetically. So if I know particular libraries that I want to report on or get, show data on, I can use this button to select those libraries, hand pick them from a list of libraries. And we'll look at an example of doing that in a little bit here. Down here at the bottom, we probably won't look too deeply at this today, but select benchmarks gives us an opportunity to get a little bit more involved. You can go in there and use a lot of statistical methods to use medians, averages, and some tools like that. Some pretty involved things there. The top one, the select by peer, is perhaps the most powerful and maybe the most used option here in Bibliostat Connect. And we're going to look at that first. So I'm going to click on that. And what this does is it allows Bibliostat Connect to select for us peer libraries based on criteria that we determine. So, again, we might be in the situation where maybe we don't know who we want to report on. Maybe we want to do a peer comparison and we don't know who our peers might be, or we want the tool to tell us, who some of our peers might be. So having clicked on that, I've got this folder tree over here on the left. And each of these categories, is representative of categories of data elements that are, part of the national data set. So again, each of these, if I'm not going to take the time to open them all up, but anytime I open one of these folders up, you can see I've got a host of elements within it, and even sometimes subfolders within it with more elements. So, there's hundreds of options for me here to select from. You can see, some of the headings: general information, expenditures. Again, I'm not going to take the time to go through all these. So these top two, statistical data elements and categorical data elements, are library data. This bottom one down here, census data elements, are something we'll take a look at near the end of our time here today. So this is where we took upon ourselves, probably about 20 years ago now, we took upon ourselves to integrate with the library data some demographic data from the US Census. So we integrated the 2000 census data about 20 years ago. And then later on, we updated that to the 2010 census data. We've not yet got the 2020 census data integrated in there, but hopefully we will have that soon. So again, we'll take a look at that in a moment. But I'm going to start out with a couple of examples here just to show you how quickly and easily we can get some graphical results up in front of us. So suppose that I want to come in here and say, okay, I'm interested in finding some peer libraries based upon population size. Okay, so I've gone in here and I've selected population of the legal service area on the left. And now you can see that when I've done that, it has dropped into this panel over here on the right. It shows the value for my library. And then it gives me fields to enter a range. But I'm going to say, okay, in addition to population, let's also look at total paid employees, just to add another determinant. So then I can come over here and I can say, okay, I can see what my values are. And I could say, okay, show me all libraries in the US that are between 60 and 66,000 in population and have between 50 and 55 total paid employees. Okay, so I could say, I could enter those ranges. And then I'm going to go ahead and click next. Okay, so having done that, now Bibliostat Connect is searching all 93, 9,400 libraries, hopefully, across the country. And it's going to return to us a list of those libraries that fall within the ranges that I just entered. Okay, so it's returned to us a list of 6, including our own. All right, and we can see, where those are located, and we can see their values for the 2 data elements that I selected. Now I could have used additional data elements if I chose to do that. I could say, okay, that's interesting. Maybe I want 1 or 2 extra, additional libraries in my peer comparison. So I could come down here and modify these ranges. And sometimes, when you're new to using the tool, you kind of just have to take a stab at things and see what you get, and then come down here and use this refine feature to widen or narrow your list of libraries, or the ranges that you've entered. So now it's added an additional library. I've got 7 now. I could continue to fiddle around with that for as long as I want to get a list of libraries that looks acceptable to me. But I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to consider these potential peers to my library, and having clicked next, you can see I'm back at the screen where I was before, but now in addition to my library, I've got 6 others listed out here. Now from here, I could use any of these methods over here on the right to add libraries to this list if I wanted to do that. I could come down here and wipe out the list and start over, or I could select particular libraries and delete those. And finally, I can come over here if I'm building a list, or if I have built a list that maybe I want to use repeatedly and I don't want to have to rebuild it every time I come in here. I can come over here and I can save this list and then just pull that up in the future, by whatever name I give it. But I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, let's go forward with these 7 libraries. All right. So now we're at the second of the 4 steps, where we're going to select the data elements that we're using in our peer comparison. So we've got the same similar looking folder tree over here on the left. But now we can recognize, okay, we've already selected the libraries we're going to report on. Now it wants to know what do we want to know about those libraries. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm interested in levels of income. I'm going to come in here and say, show me state, local, and federal income levels, operating income for these libraries. All right, so I've selected those here on the left. They've populated over here on the right. And now the only other thing I have to do from this screen is to select, the time frame that I want to look at. Now, we're looking at the national data set from IMLS, which lags quite a ways behind your state data set, which we'll look at in a moment. Your state has several more years more recent than the national one. Right now, we just got 2019 data from IMLS. Hopefully, we'll be getting the next set soon. But so I'm going to, for this example, I'm just going to say, okay, show me the most recent year, and I'm going to say next. So now we're taken to the format screen, and there's several options here. I'm just going to skim over those for a second just to show us, to get some results here up in front of us. The main thing that you want to do here is to select between graph and table. Okay, so I'm going to select graph. I'm going to make it a bar chart. And we'll come back to these sections here, or options here in a moment, and talk about them. But I'm just going to go ahead and click next so that I can get a chart up here in front of me. So I've done a lot of blabbing on here, but hopefully you've seen, in spite of all the talking that I've done, how few clicks and how easy it has been for me to, up to this point, to get graphical data up here in front of me. So I've got my library along with the 6 others that we selected earlier on. And I can see at a glance, we've got the green is local operating income, the red is state, and the blue is federal. Okay, so I can see, where my library lies in relation to these other potential peer libraries in terms of operating income. Okay, so that could be kind of interesting to me, but suppose I take a look at this and I say, well, the federal income and even the state is not really figuring in on the same level um, across all of these states. So maybe I want to pull those out and just look for a moment, simplify my chart and just look at local income. So instead of, having to click back and next every time to advance, I can come up here on the main menu bar and just click to go back to that second step, back to the data step. And I can say, okay, let's pull out state and federal. And then I can, again, just come up here to the top and click results to get back to my bar chart, bar graph here. Okay, so, now I've got this simplified representation here of local operating income for these 7 libraries. So again, kind of a simple example, but hopefully, what I wanted to show was how easy it is to get data up in front of you, and even from there, how you can easily modify your chart. I could go back to the libraries page and add libraries to it or pull libraries off of it, and then just jump right back to my results. And from here, I can email this chart to myself or to anyone else who would be interested. I can print it off. I can copy it and paste it into a presentation, a Word document or PowerPoint or whatever that I'm building or working with. So again, a lot of talking, but that's kind of our first example that I wanted to get up in front of us. So let's. Oh, wait! I was going to show you one other thing while we're here. Suppose that I want to come and say, okay, I'm going to jump back to the data page again for a second, and I'm going to say, okay, that's interesting. We looked at 2019. What if we want to do like a sort of a time trend analysis? You can see that data here in the national data set goes all the way back to 96. And I could go just for fun, I could say, okay, let's look at all of the data that are available in here for operating income. And then I could say, okay, let's change it to a line graph rather than a bar chart and group it by years here. Okay, so again, we'll come back to this screen here in a minute and talk a little bit more about it, but just so that you can see, with just a few clicks, I've completely changed my output here into a different kind of view. So we're looking at local operating income over the last whatever it is, 20 years roughly. So we can see our library here, and if I hover over a particular library, it will highlight that one for me. So it's kind of just some interesting ways there that you might identify peer libraries. You could use this potentially to take before a funding authority and say, these are the types of levels that these other libraries are receiving, and do some advocacy that way. You could also use it to identify peers that maybe you want to contact and see what they're doing with this or that, or how they're doing something different from what's happening at your library. So a lot of libraries use it as a way, to identify strengths and weaknesses that they might perceive. So I'm going to jump now back to, excuse me, back to the initial setup screen. So if I come up here to the to the top right and click on settings, that's going to take me back to this setup screen where we first landed when we logged in. Okay, so you might recall everything we've been looking at up to this point has been in the national data set. Okay, so that's the one titled PLSC/census. Okay, so let's say, you know, that's been interesting, but maybe we want to focus for a minute just on our state's data set. And maybe, you know, that's where I'm most interested right now. So I've selected our state from the list of data sets there. And then I can come down here. Again, I don't have to do this, but I can, once again, I can identify myself as a particular library if I choose to do that. And now if I click next, I'm back here to this screen that you might remember. This is our first step up here in selecting libraries. Okay, so, you know, now we're looking only at Iowa libraries. So if I were to come in here and look at, I still can use the peer selector to have the tool find peers for me based on criteria that I select from the state data here. Or, you know, since maybe I'm more familiar with libraries in my state and I already know particular ones that I want to use in a peer comparison or report of some type, I can come in here and, you know, hand pick them by holding down my control key or my shift key to select range or whatever I want to do. So, you know, if you have, maybe a regional group, you can easily build that in here and then save that group as well. One thing I can do that can be kind of interesting, I could select the entire list of all libraries in the state. Okay, so I'm just going to do that for a minute, and I'm going to say, okay, let's look at all the libraries in the state. And then I'm going to advance once again. So now I'm here at the data elements page, and I could say, okay, let's look at, you know, circulation per capita for all libraries in the state. I think it's in here. There we go. Okay, so now having selected that, and I could, you know, I can select other data elements to my heart's desire or whatever over here on the left, but I'm just going to look right now at circulation per capita. I come over here on the right, and you can see with your state data, we've got as recent as 2023. So much more recent than the national data. It goes back to 2000. So I could say, okay, let's look at, 2023. Circulation per capita. Okay. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's not advancing. Okay, that's not good. Let me try that again. Okay, so okay, so we're looking at circulation per capita. Now, if I were to keep this in a graph, because we're looking at, I don't remember, I think it's like around 500 libraries, you know, it's not going to be very useful in a graph. It still will produce something like this, which, you know, you can do if you want to look at that for whatever purpose. Kind of interesting, and you can, you know, hover over particular libraries to see what some of the outliers are looking like. But most likely with this number of libraries, I'm going to want to generate a table. Okay, so we haven't looked at a table yet. I can come in here and select a table here from the format screen. And then I get presented with this, you know, pretty simple table here. Again, we just selected one data element. So we've just got one column here. But we could have selected however many data elements we want. And those columns would be added, you know, running out to the right here. I can use these column headers to click on and, sort these in ascending or descending order. So I can, at a glance, see all of the libraries in the state, circulation per capita, and scrolling down, I can see mine here, which is a little bit emboldened there. I can see where I lie in relation to all other libraries in the state, circulation per capita. So that can be kind of interesting. I can also come down here and, once again, I can email this to whoever I want to. I can export this to Excel and then do more manipulations with the data from within Excel or whatever I want to do with that. So that's just, an interesting way that you can do sort of a spot check analysis on all libraries in the state or all libraries in a region or whatever list of libraries that you want to build. Okay, so I want to get to a couple of other quick examples here before we run out of time. Okay, well, we'll come back to that in a second. All right, so we've looked at doing a table. Let's suppose that, it's kind of interesting. We've been looking at everybody in the state, but maybe we want to just look at our library. Maybe we don't care about other libraries right now. And we only are interested in reporting on something, from our library. Maybe that's going to work. Okay. All right, so we're back to just ourselves listed here in the select libraries. And I could say, okay, let's advance from here and say, I'm kind of still interested in circulation per capita. But let's look at it as sort of a time trend sort of thing and see where we've been with circulation per capita over the last 24 years. Okay. So again, I could put that in a table, but graphs are always interesting when I'm able to do that. Okay, so you can see probably had a year here where it wasn't reported or whatever, but so it kind of gives you, again, just data at a glance, and data that you can easily report on and communicate to others with or about. Okay, so here we've got a simple, again, time trend analysis of our circulation per capita. So what if I wanted to go back to the data screen and add in another data element? Let's see, I was going to look at, of course, you can play around with this and do whatever you want. Sometimes, when you put multiple data elements on a single graph, you have to sort of be aware that, the scale of what you're looking at and so on. And there's ways that you can even change. You can have multiple y-axes so that you can sort of compensate or adjust for the difference in scale that way. But I was going to try to get, okay, yeah. So we've got something here that at least it's near enough we can keep it on the same chart here. So we've got, circulation per capita in green since 2000, and then number of total paid employees, full-time equivalent up here at the top. So, you could use something like that to see whether or not there's a correlation over time or whatever you want to do. So again, the whole idea behind this is to just make data available and accessible to you all. These are your data. Again, gathered over all these years. Why not make it available to you and to serve your libraries? So that's the idea behind it. Okay. All right. So let me do one more example, and then maybe we can look at questions or whatever you want to do with the last few minutes. Okay, let me just point out a couple of other things too. So we mentioned early on, you can save a list of libraries right here, so you don't have to rebuild that list of libraries every time if you have a group that you're going to report on frequently. You can do the same thing with a list of data elements. So if there's a particular report or chart that you're going to be generating, regularly, you can come in here and you can save that list of data elements that you've built in here and then just pull it up, by clicking on load list when you want to generate that report again. I'm just trying to skim over to see what I may not have shown you yet. So just quickly here, you can give a chart a title right here. You can see how you can, kind of change what you're grouping by. Everything we've been looking at is just regular data. But again, if you want to get really involved, you can look at percentiles, ranks, and some different things that way. You can give each axis a title. So if you're generating a graph that you're going to save or use in a presentation or whatever, you probably want to label those so it's clear in your graph. There's lots of things that we don't have time to look at that you can do with display, changing color schemes. You saw right here that from this drop down, there's main choices like bars, line, and donut graphs. But I'll show you in a moment that from the results screen itself, there's about 20 other choices. So these are, probably just the 3 most popular that you can choose from here. You can go up to 2 different decimal places with your data. You can turn the legend on or off and so forth. Okay, so let's look at doing one more example here. And so I'm going to come back to, actually, I'm going to go back to the settings screen again, to the setup page. So if you will harken back to the very first example that we did, we were looking at the national data set. So I'm going to go back to that. This one we've been in most recently is your state data set. So I'm going to go back to the national data set and I'm going to say, okay, that first example that we did, we were looking at population and I think it was full-time staff or whatever, or just total employees to generate a list of peers. Now, suppose we want to come in here and we're going to use the peer selector again. Okay, so again, like I was just saying, last time, we came in here, we looked at population. We're going to look at that again. And then as a second determinant, we used staff size. Okay, total paid employees. But now suppose we want to come in, instead of doing that, we're going to look at some of these census data down here we haven't looked at yet. So like I mentioned, about 20 years ago, we integrated US Census demographic data along with the library data to, kind of just give an additional dimension and maybe an increased strength or opportunity to build a case for library advocacy. So I can come in here and say, okay, I'm still going to look at population, and I've got that over here on the right. But now, as a second determinant, I'm going to look at household income. Okay, so you can see the categories here. We don't have time to open them up, but we've got age, education, household income, language, race and ethnicity, school enrollment. Okay, so I could come in here and say, all right, let's look at median household income as my second determinant. And then I could come in here and say, okay, show me all libraries between 59 and 67,000 in population and between 40 and 44, sorry, 40 and 44 thousand income. Okay. So now if I click next, once again, it's searching nationwide, 9,400 libraries, and it's returned to us a list of 16 libraries that fall within those ranges. So I could say, okay, that's interesting, but it might be too many to put on a graph, so or a chart. So I'm going to come in here and say, okay, let's narrow that a little bit to narrow the population, see what we come up with. Okay, so now we're down to 10. It might be a little bit more manageable. And I could say, okay, let's go ahead with that group of 10 libraries. And I'm going to come over here and say, okay, now let's look at local operating income for those 10 libraries. So I didn't memorize the list of libraries, excuse me, but I'm pretty sure that probably all of them in our second list were different from the first list. Maybe there was one or two that were the same. I didn't look closely enough. But the idea here is that, this will give you an opportunity, trying to click and talk at the same time. This will give you an opportunity to do away potentially with the argument, that maybe a funding authority comes back to you and says, yeah, in the first example, you're showing us similar sized libraries, but they're in a more affluent area than our libraries. So, now you can sort of do away with that argument and come back and say, well, no, I'm showing you not just like libraries, but now we're looking at like communities. Once you sort of integrate some of those demographic data as we've done here. So again, I'm just kind of speeding through this, but hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of some of the things you can do and some of the power behind Bibliostat Connect. I want to leave some time for questions, so I think I should probably stop at this point, and hopefully you've seen enough to get an idea of things you can do, logging in yourself and navigating around, playing with the tool and with the data. So thank you. I'll go ahead and see if Becky, if you have any questions.
You bet. We've had some comments coming through. Only one question that I actually logged here, but I first just want to say thank you. I have tried to play with this on my own in past years. I don't know if it's gotten easier, but this looks much more manageable than what I tried to do the last time I tried to do it. So I think there's some really great data here. So the question that came in from Wendy is, how quickly are you able to get the year's fiscal info input? Would comparisons be ready for the budget season, which is around January? So I'm just going to sort of step in as a state person here and say, this is based on the data that you all put into the annual survey, which is due at the end of October. So then we have it, Scott had to gather it all, and then it was sent into IMLS. And he didn't like to publish things until it was accepted at IMLS and he knew all the data was correct. So a lot of times that data was not available in our state until April or so, which was when he was confident in releasing it. But he did have access to it. So if you had a specific question, he was willing to kind of look at that data and pull it out for you. So Jan, I'll let you talk maybe a little bit more from your side of that.
Yeah, usually we can, once, if I'm understanding the question, once we get a data set from the state data coordinator, which has been Scott for many years, and now I believe it's Gary. Once we get the new data and the go ahead to load it to Bibliostat Connect, usually we can do that. Usually it can be pretty fast within like a couple of weeks. But it might take a little longer than that if there's any problems or anything we need to do to massage the data or whatever. But yeah, we can usually load that within a couple of weeks. The national data, like I mentioned, we have to rely on when IMLS tells us that the new data set is ready and available for publication or whatever. So yeah, we don't have a ton of control over that. But the state data sets, as soon as we receive them from the state library, we can load them.
Great, thank you. And like I said, it's not due until the end of October, and then the data coordinator, I don't think Gary is in. I was going to ask him if he wanted to weigh in. It has to be sort of looked at and massaged to make sure everybody's is in, because not everybody gets theirs in on time. And so it's generally, February or so before he starts really looking at all of that. So that's about the earliest that my guess is. I don't know if you have any idea when those are typically turned in, but my guess for Iowa, it's probably not until February, March, at least.
Yeah, I don't work too closely on that side of things.
Right, I'm sure. Yeah.
So I'm not as familiar, but yeah, just whenever we get it, I know it's a pretty short turnaround
Yeah,
to
great.
be available. So
All right. Did anyone have any other questions? Go ahead and post it in the chat, or did I miss any? I was trying to kind of watch through as we were going through this, and that was the only one that I saw was from Wendy. Um, multiple sources of data. Where can you tell us where this data comes from again, and sort of go over that again?
like the different data sets, I'm guessing. So if I go back to the setup screen, this drop down here shows me all of the data sets. So this is the one, we spent time in, is the national data set up here. There are some older data sets in here. There was a period where we had data from LJ Index, ratings and rankings. I think this is the PLA data set. Some of these are old and may not be that applicable or interesting at this point, but they're still in here. Pretty much once something lives in here, it usually stays in here in case anyone wants it or needs it. So there's I think this is some academic data that's in there from a while ago. And then, again, most of the rest of these are individual state data sets, British Columbia, from Canada. Some states have multiple data sets that they have employed over the years, because they have multiple surveys that they administer through Connect, and then they can make those available in here. These are some Australian states. So hopefully I'm answering the question.
I think, sort of to clarify, and then Elizabeth kind of wrote back in, for Iowa, all of the state data does come from the annual survey. And the stuff that you pull in from the census then, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
All right. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to Sam. Say thank you very much. Like I said, I really appreciated this. It sort of helped clarify some things in my mind, and I know there's stuff I'm going to be looking at. We get asked frequently about comparing salaries or square footage of buildings, and all of that is in that annual survey. This is going to be a really easy way to go in and look at statewide comparisons as well as the national ones. So I'm really excited about that.
Great. I'm glad.
Yes, very helpful. Thank you, Becky, for sort of shepherding us through that, and to Jan and to Baker and Taylor for this resource. We'll certainly have fun exploring it. I want to remind folks that if you are signing off for the day and not coming to our evening keynote tonight, now's the time to fill out your evaluation form. Let us know what you thought about the sessions you attended, how you plan to apply what you learned, and what you thought about the conference, so that we can evaluate the evaluation conference. I'm not going to get sick of saying that. I only get one more chance to say it because we only have the evening session left. But we will be signing off here until about 6 o'clock. So I'm going to close down this Zoom. But remember at 6 to head back to the conference website to get the link to the Zoom for tonight's session with Kevin Unrath from the State Library of Vermont, who's going to be talking about return on investment or library value beyond just a pure return on investment. I think it's going to be a really nice session. So thanks again to everyone who presented today. Thanks to everyone who attended. We look forward to seeing you this evening.